Reproduction is a biological process by which living organisms produce more of themselves, individuals of their kind as a result. The ability to reproduce is rather rare. During evolution, conservative. During evolution, conservative means open to only moderate change. Plant propagation is the process of increasing the number of plants in a species, perpetuating a species, or keeping a plant young. There are two types of reproduction, sexual and asexual.
Two types of reproduction in plant.
1. Asexual reproduction. There is no mingling of genetic traits because the nucleus contains the cell's genetic material. 2. Sexual reproduction. It is based on a complicated set of basic biological activities involving chromosomes and their genes that occurred within a complex sexual apparatus.
Reproductive apparatus.
Color, aroma, and nectar are used by flowers to attract animals. The process of pollination can now commence. The swollen and protected ovaries of the plant is called fruit. A plant's growing seed till it is ripe. The living plant embryo and the food supply are both included in the seed components cotyledon.
Reproductive process.
Pollination and cross-pollination are both possibilities. Pollen is dispersed more widely by bees than by any other creature. Artificial pollination can also be used to develop new plant kinds for specific uses.
The transfer of seeds away from the parent plant, either manually or mechanically, is known as dispersal. Wind, waterways, bird droppings, and animal fur can all contribute to it. It refers to the transformation of a seed into a new plant. It will commence when a specific date arrives. The internal criterion has been met. A mature embryo, large enough endosperm to maintain the embryo during germination, and adequate hormones or auxines to start the process are all required in a seed.
Methods of breaking dormancy.
Seeds are placed in a glass container and coated with acid to scarify them. Sulfuric acid in concentrated form. Mechanical scarification weakens the seed coat, filling it with a metal file, rubbing it with sandpaper, or cracking it with a hammer. The process of hot water scarification is immersing the seed in hot water. The seeds are let to soak in the water for 12 to 24 hours while it cools before being planted. Seeds are stored in a non-sterile, warm, humid container where the seed coat is broken down by deterioration over several months and moist scarification.
Some fall ripening trees and bushes in the temperature zone will not produce seeds. They will not germinate unless they are kept cool underground during the winter. This is known as after ripening, and it can be done artificially.
Methods of asexual.
The most effective method for preserving a species, particularly an individual who best represents that species. It is a vegetative plant portion that is separated from the parent plant in order to regenerate and develop a new plant. When stems that are still linked to their parent plants come into contact with the rooting media, they can produce roots. When the rooted stem is severed from the parent plant, it grows into a new plant. It supports a high success rate by preventing cuttings from succumbing to water stress and glucose deficiency. Grafting and budding are asexual plant propagation procedures that unite plant components to form a single plant. It's made up of a single bud and a small bit of bark from the scion and a rootstock. It's especially important when there's a scarcity of scion material. It's also faster than grafting and creates a stronger bond.
Two types of reproduction in animals.
It's a type of reproduction in which a female is fertilized by a male's sperm and becomes pregnant as a result. It is not necessary for two members of the same species to bring life into the world. Rather, an animal can bring life into the world without the assistance of another.
Two types of sexual reproduction.
When the male sperm is inside the body of the female sperm, fertilizes the egg. This method of fertilization is used by mammals, birds, insects, and reptiles. Like human beings, when the male sperm penetrates the egg, this procedure occurs. The embryo's gestation begins. This is when sperm enters the egg outside of the body of the mother. This is especially true in aquatic species like fish and sea turtles, amphibians. The female lays a large number of eggs in the water, and the male fertilizes them. He fertilizes them by disseminating his sperm on them.
Classification of animals.
The fetus is fed through the umbilical cord, which transfers food, and these animals give birth to living offspring, developing an embryo in the mother's body.
These animals conceive outside of the mother's body. The embryo and many layers that protect it develop inside an egg that contains the infant.
Type of development.
This occurs when a baby's appearance upon birth resembles that of their parents, e.g., mammals. It happens when the infant looks nothing like its mother, e.g., butterfly, frog.
Types of asexual reproduction.
Single-celled organisms that split in half to produce new life. This occurs when a species, such as a marine sponge, forms a lump that converts into new life on its own. A portion of a living thing can produce another, such as a starfish's arm, which can develop a new starfish. This type of animal has both sexes, females and men. It may develop an embryo without the help of another member, such as snails. This is an embryo that develops from a non-fertilized bodily component. This is most common in arthropods, although it can also be seen in fish and reptiles. They have offspring hosts, so they are unaffected by human influence. Genetic components are identical to any other individual.
The genes.
Genes are what pass down our characteristics from generation to generation, and they are made up by deoxyribonucleic acid DNA. It acts as a manual for creating functional molecules like ribonucleic acid, RNA, and proteins, which carry out chemical reactions in our body. Nucleotides refers to the sequence of genes individual in the building units, which are labeled adenine, T-thymine, C-cysteine, G-guanine.
Genetic engineering.
The direct manipulation of DNA to change an organism's properties in a specific way is referred to as genetic engineering. It's also known as agenetic alteration. Scientists utilize it to improve or change the traits of an individual organism. It has the ability to create a plant with increased nutritional value or that can withstand herbicide treatment. In 1973, a bacteria became the first genetically engineered organism. The identical techniques were used on mice in 1974. The first genetically modified foods were released in 1994.
Genetically modified organism.
Recombinant genetic technologies, on the other hand, are used in genetic modification to create species whose genomes have been precisely edited at the molecular level. Scientific technologies such as recombinant DNA technology and reproductive cloning are used to create clones. A nucleus is taken from the cell of the individual to be cloned and placed into the nucleus. As a result of the procedure, an offspring is produced who is genetically similar to the donor.
Pros of genetically modified foods. 1. Better overall quality and taste. 2. More resistance to disease. 3. More nutrition benefits. Cons of genetically modified foods. 1. Environmental damage. 2. There is no incoming value. 3. A growth in allergic reactions in the general population.
Audio Jungle.